Sometimes the greatest rewards do not come from climbing the corporate ladder, but from stepping off it. She left behind the security of a steady paycheck, not knowing that her leap of faith into service would one day place her in front of the President of the United States. Emily Carter had always believed that success was measured by promotions, paychecks, and prestigious titles. For nearly a decade, she climbed the ladder of a high-profile marketing firm in New York City. She lived in a sleek apartment, wore tailored suits, and attended late-night meetings in skyscrapers that glittered over the Hudson. Yet beneath the polished surface, she felt an ache, a gnawing emptiness she couldn't explain. The campaigns she worked on were profitable, the clients impressed, but Emily often stared at her reflection in glass windows, asking silently, "Is this it?" That question grew louder after one encounter on a cold November night. Walking home after another 14-hour workday, Emily saw a young boy sitting outside a grocery store. His clothes were too thin for the biting wind, and his hands trembled as he clutched a paper bag. He wasn't begging, he just sat there quietly, watching people pass by. Something about his stillness pierced her. Without thinking, she bought him a sandwich and hot chocolate and asked where his parents were. He whispered, "They're gone." Emily didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying his words, feeling her own life's purpose shrinking against the weight of what she had just seen. In the days that followed, she began volunteering on weekends at a local shelter. It started as a way to silence her conscience, but soon, the hours she spent there filled her with a sense of peace she had never felt in the boardroom. She listened to stories of mothers fleeing abuse, children growing up without parents, veterans forgotten after service. Their resilience humbled her. One evening, after helping serve dinner at the shelter, Emily walked home and realized she dreaded going back to her office the next morning. The glossy presentations and corporate deals now felt trivial compared to the raw, human needs she had witnessed. After weeks of wrestling with the decision, she did the unthinkable, she resigned. Her boss called it career suicide. Her colleagues shook their heads, unable to fathom why someone with such promise would throw it all away. But Emily knew she wasn't walking away, she was walking toward something. She had no clear plan, no steady income, and no assurance that she wouldn't regret it. But Emily chose to commit herself fully to volunteer work, believing that purpose mattered more than security. What she didn't know was that this decision, made in a small office with a resignation letter, would set her on a journey that would one day bring her face to face with the President of the United States. The transition was not easy. At first, Emily struggled financially. She traded her expensive apartment for a modest shared space, learned to live without luxuries, and took part-time jobs to sustain herself while dedicating most of her hours to volunteering. She became a fixture at the shelter, not just serving meals but sitting down with the people society overlooked. She taught children how to read, helped single mothers write resumes, and offered companionship to the elderly who had no family left to visit them. But Emily was not content with simply volunteering. She began to notice patterns, systemic gaps that kept people trapped in cycles of poverty and dependence. Children in shelters had no access to tutoring. Families couldn't find affordable housing even after working multiple jobs. Veterans lacked mental health support. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, Emily felt challenged. She believed solutions were possible if people with resources connected directly with those in need. So she started small. Emily launched a community initiative she called Bridges of Hope, designed to connect local businesses with shelters, schools, and struggling families. She persuaded a bookstore owner to donate children's books, a grocery store to contribute leftover produce, and law students to provide free legal advice. What began as a handful of connections quickly grew into a network. Within 2 years, Bridges of Hope had expanded across the city, linking thousands of volunteers with hundreds of families. The project caught attention. Newspapers featured her efforts, local TV stations aired interviews, and nonprofit leaders invited her to speak at conferences. But Emily never saw herself as extraordinary. She insisted that she was just someone who decided to stop walking past people in need. Her humility only inspired more people to join her cause. Volunteers poured in, and businesses eagerly partnered with her initiative. Still, Emily faced setbacks. Funding was scarce, bureaucracy was frustrating, and sometimes the stories she encountered broke her so deeply that she cried herself to sleep. There were nights when she questioned if she had made a mistake leaving her stable career. But every time she watched a child graduate high school, a mother secure housing, or a veteran smile after receiving care, she knew her choice had meaning. By her 5th year of service, Bridges of Hope had grown into a nationally recognized nonprofit. Emily found herself speaking not just to local communities but to senators, policymakers, and philanthropists. And though she never sought recognition, recognition began to find her. Emily's work soon reached the ears of national leaders. Her nonprofit's innovative model, bridging private resources with public needs, was studied by think tanks and cited in discussions about social reform. Invitations to larger platforms followed. She was asked to testify before congressional committees, to advise on policies for housing and child welfare, and to mentor other community leaders. Despite the growing spotlight, Emily never lost her grounding. She still spent nights at the shelter, still sat with children to read, still served meals side by side with volunteers. For her, the spotlight was a means, not an end. If a stage or microphone allowed her to amplify the voices of those silenced by poverty, then she would stand there, but she never let it define her. One particularly pivotal moment came when Emily met a teenage girl named Jasmine. Jasmine had grown up in and out of shelters, often skipping school because she felt invisible and hopeless. Emily took Jasmine under her wing, tutoring her, encouraging her, and showing up at every milestone. Years later, when Jasmine earned a college scholarship, she credited Emily's belief in her as the turning point of her life. Stories like Jasmine spread, becoming living testimonies of Emily's impact. The White House began to take notice. Emily was nominated for a National Humanitarian Award, a distinction honoring citizens who had made profound contributions to society. At first, she dismissed it, she had never sought awards. But when she received the official letter inviting her to the White House for the ceremony, she was overcome with disbelief. The girl who had once walked away from a secure corporate life was now being recognized at the highest level of her country. The day of the ceremony was surreal. Emily stood among a small group of honorees, each with their own extraordinary stories of service and sacrifice. As she walked through the gates of the White House, she felt a wave of humility wash over her. She thought of the boy outside the grocery store years ago, the first spark that ignited her journey. She thought of the mothers, the veterans, the children who had trusted her enough to let her into their lives. When her name was called, Emily stepped onto the stage. The president shook her hand warmly, speaking of her courage to leave comfort for compassion, of her vision to build bridges where there were none, and of the countless lives changed through her work. The room erupted in applause, but Emily's eyes filled with tears, not because of the recognition, but because she knew this moment belonged to all the people who had once been unseen. In her acceptance speech, Emily did not talk about her own sacrifices. Instead, she spoke about the resilience of those she had served, about the power of community, and about how true success is not measured by wealth or status but by the lives we touch. Her words silenced the room, leaving even seasoned leaders with tears in their eyes. After the ceremony, Emily returned not to a luxurious lifestyle or elite circle but back to her community, back to the shelters and families who still needed her. The White House honor became a symbol, not a destination. For Emily, the journey was never about recognition, it was about responsibility. And so, the woman who had once quit her job against all advice proved a timeless truth: when you choose purpose over profit, you may lose the world's definition of success, but you gain something far greater, the chance to change lives, and perhaps even history. Emily's journey reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose kindness over comfort. You don't need to be in the White House to make an impact, you can start with one act of compassion today. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope, and let's spread kindness together. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more real stories that prove kindness can change the world.